Hey, everybody, this is Tom Sega from Duluth Pack, and this is the Duluth Pack podcast, Leader of the Pack. Our leader and special guest today is Justin Juntunen, the founder at Cedar and Stone Nordic Sauna. Justin, welcome.
Tom, so great to be here with you today.
Oh, we're going to have some fun talking about saunas, but give us the Finnish pronunciation of your last name, which I reluctantly told you I wouldn't go there because I would butcher it.
Well, I'll answer to anything you want, Tom, but you said Juntunen. Lots of Finnish words get, Americanized. My last name pronounced in the Finnish would be Juntunen. And you, Tom, pronounce sauna in the Finnish dialect, not sauna, like we sort of commonly hear, sauna. So if people are asking, that is in the dictionary in two different pronunciations. It's the only Finnish word that came over into English. So a lot of people around here in Duluth with you and me, Tom, say it the proper Finnish way, sauna.
Well, we're going to get into that. We're going to try to correct people so they actually say it the proper way. And prior to recording today, you and I were kind of laughing because I said, well, if they say it that other way, which I refuse to say, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard to me because I actually have a sauna and I love to take saunas. So, but before we talk about hopping in a sauna, we got to figure out how you became the sauna king. So let's talk about your background, Justin, and where did you grow up? What was your did you take saunas when you were growing up? What was your childhood like and all that good stuff?
Yeah, you don't have to go very far in my background to actually run into sauna because I grew up in a little small town in northern Minnesota, Esko, Minnesota. It's just 20 minutes out of Duluth. And I remember building my first sauna with my dad when I was 3 years old. I had been in one prior, but we were in fact even building it early on, young kids. So I've always grown up. Sauna is this cultural pastime for me that's really been handed to me by my family. Grew up in this area, love the four seasons of the Great North up here. Moved away for a number of years, spent some time doing education in a few other spots, and then moved out east for a long time. Winter wasn't cold enough anywhere else, Tom, so I had to move home. And Duluth, our long, proud winters got me back. And at the time then, I was like working in higher education. And so I've gone sort of from growing up around here, leaving for school and education, then being an educator for a long time. And then I found my way into entrepreneurship after a few decades when I kind of fell back in love with Duluth. So a little bit of a circle tour there, but yeah, I love it here. It's good to be home. It's good to be back.
So growing up, what were some of your passions as a young kid? Obviously, building a sauna at 3 years old with your dad, and probably taking a lot of them. But what were your passions? You love winter. You're a winter guy. What were some of those passions, and what was your life like growing up with long winters in Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, for me here, it was classic small town living of one, knowing where you're from and caring about it and living in all those seasons. I grew up in a really kind of working class family. Grandpa was a barber for 44 years. If you're a barber, you're like good at listening, good at telling stories, and okay at cutting hair. He was great at all three of those things. And my other grandpa started a trucking company in town. So talk about salt of the earth people. I mean, you're truckers and movers on that. So I watched two entrepreneurial grandpas, and I just was like a little kid, sort of sitting next to, learning from them, understanding what it is to do life, do business. And then I like played sports and did football, basketball, track, all those sorts of things. So life growing up in the area here, in some ways, very unremarkable, very like caring, important family who I care deeply about now. And some of those things are, why we moved back. The story around this area, I felt like as a young kid, was if you wanted opportunity, go elsewhere. And now I think that story has changed. I think people are moving to Duluth because they want to have the outdoors 5 minutes from their doorstep, and like sort of part of the entrepreneurial culture here in Duluth, which you've really been at the helm of, one of the people at the helm of for decades and decades. And I'm I'm one of the new guys in the scene on that.
So, Justin, you decided to leave the area at a young age. Went to Bethel University. What did you study? What did you get your degree in? And then you went to Geneva College. And what did you do? And where was that as well?
Yeah, I was down in the Twin Cities. I wasn't one of those kids who sort of knew what they wanted to do when they grew up. For me, it was more of a discovery path. The world got really big when I went to undergrad, and I love that about it. I went in because I have a bit of a musical background. I went in as a choral conducting major. That was only one semester for me. They turned music into math, and I said, sorry, that's not me. And I ended with 2 degrees, a degree in philosophy and a degree in theology and religious studies. And so in many ways, Tom, what I was studying there, I'm a true liberal arts guy. What I learned was how to communicate, how to think, how to solve problems, and how to work with people. And I didn't get one career path out of that. I got those skills to put into any job or any area. And it's tough because, higher ed, especially now, is really expensive. But I think there's something that has really translated for me about entrepreneurship and business, where we're solving problems every single day. We're communicating with people every single day. And for me, that was the undergrad work. And then I wanted to stay in education. And so I started working in higher ed. I got a master's in higher ed out in Pennsylvania because I was working in the Pittsburgh area. And there was, working full time at a college out there, helping students decide where they want to go for their life. And I was getting my master's during that time as well out there. So, yeah, I'm an educator through and through. Now I just teach people about sauna all the time, which is super fun. It's just I've changed course a little bit there from some of the other ones.
Justin, so you're out east, you're in Pennsylvania, and what job did you then get with your degrees as your first job out of college?
Yeah, for me, it was working in higher ed. I had been working in higher ed for right after undergrad. That took me out to Pennsylvania, and then it's what brought me back, actually. So I was working in a lot of outside the classroom learning, student affairs, student leadership development, residence life. My wife is the star of that story. Our first few years of marriage, we lived in college dormitories, and she was there with me. So we came back to Duluth because of getting a job at the College of St. Scholastica, a great little liberal arts school, Catholic liberal arts school here. And so all of that for me, Tom, was sort of that experience of being a liberal arts guy, communicating, working with people, solving problems, and then putting that into an educational setting, especially for those students. And I loved it. It was great. It was really formative seasons of life. It was a decade of teaching and learning. And then I spent some time basically sort of asking, like, what do I want to be putting my hands to? And I worked for a national nonprofit for about 5 years. And in those 5 years, I just kept falling in love with Duluth more. I just kept wanting to invest here. And I kept wanting to say, what would that look like? And more entrepreneurship and business sort of rose to the surface. It was less and less about serve other people in other places. And it was, how do I sink in roots to a community here? And so a lot of my perspective on business is sort of grounded around people and place. Sauna just happens to be the how for me in all those things. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure it does, because, if you're going to invest in a long career, you want to definitely be where you're going to love to be, and in that your family wants to be. And you're also going to want to surround yourself with like-minded people from an area that they want to be as well, because if your employees don't want to be here, they're not going to be your employees very long.
Absolutely. And it's wild to now be, a few years past that. We've just had some amazing people sign up to be with us on this, and to be working with us and doing. It's hard to be a part of a company that's growing and changing and developing. But we just have some folks that have kind of come out of the woodwork from all over to say, hey, I want to be a part of that thing. but I might be getting too far into the questions here, Tom. You tell me. You're the one.
No, so this is all good. We in 2019, you found Cedar and Stone Nordic Saunas, but there had to be some track prior to that when you're starting to plan for this thing and how are we going to do it and what's our business going to look like and all those things. Can you walk our listeners through your not only thought patterns, but the process you went through to get to 2019 where you founded the company and actually launched it?
Absolutely. There's a series of 2 to 3 years there where I spent doing inner work. And we're going to get deep real fast. Like I'm saying the kind of work that's like trauma recovery work, inner sort of healing stuff, spending it with spiritual leaders in my life, people who I really cared about deeply, and I let speak into my life of what could I put my hands to? What could I do for the world? And I knew at that time, I knew two things were true. I knew that I was going to stay committed to my wife, Gretchen, and then our two little ones. We had like a 1.5-year-old and then one on the way. And so it was like we were in little kid time, and it was those are super important. And I just kept feeling this like I gotta build something. I gotta do something more. I need to commit more. And that's when what kept bubbling up was this commitment to Duluth, to the flourishing of this place, to the people here, the water here, the land here. And this idea of sort of jumping into business is like, it sounds fun on a leadership podcast. It sounds great when we talk about the grind of entrepreneurship. Like, Tom, it's the biggest financial risk of my life. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And so if those things are true, the formative time ahead of it before making that decision, in my opinion, is some of the most important work. Because if not, you just go in blindly saying, yep, we're going to make a thing happen. Or you go in thinking you have everything figured out for the next 10 years and realize on day 3.5 that you have to totally pivot and turn and shift and solve the problem a different way than you thought before. So absolutely. I mean, all of that time for me was like that inner supportive work of what am I doing? This work for me feels a lot more like calling to me, feels like the thing I'm built for than it does a good decision based on the economic conditions and the market. Though I did also write the 47-page business plan to make sure that we were going to make some good steps at the beginning. And so as I was in that phase personally, I'm a bit of a vision caster. So for me as a leader and as a CEO, that visionary evangelist, say the thing and help that thing come into the world. I'm talking like that before it's real. And my wife pulls me aside. She was like, Justin, you keep talking to people like this whole sauna idea is real. I really need to see some numbers. And that was super helpful for me. I'm casting it into the world. I'm doing research in many ways. I'm sort of thinking about it and communicating it in a way that feels much more like, hey, what do people react to when I say this? How do they respond? And she did a good job of grounding me, that visionary part of me, and saying, hey, what does that actually look like? How do I come back down to earth? And now let's write the business plan. Let's do the market research and let's make that happen. And for me, that was, I don't want to, for any leaders, any entrepreneurs thinking about it, be patient in that season as you're discerning vision, because the more work you do there, I think the better the rewards are afterwards. The more assured you are. The really hard days when things are feeling like they're blowing up, you're like, yeah, but I know I'm meant to do this. I know I'm called to do this thing. Or the days when you're hitting home runs and you're like, look at what we just did, team. It actually doesn't go to your head because you're just like, hey, I'm on an assignment here. I'm trying to do this thing and I'm committed to it. Does that resonate at all, Tom?
Oh, goodness. I think every small business person and anyone listening out there that would want to be in business needs to hear those words, because they're so true. You have to be that passionate about your business. It doesn't matter whether it's canvas and leather bags or whether it's saunas. It doesn't matter what widget you have or service you have. You have to be passionate about it first, but then you also need to be grounded in it that, oh, by the way, there's some financial responsibilities here. And my next question, I guess I would ask is, as you as an entrepreneur are going to start a business, somebody needs capital. It either comes from you, it comes from other business people out there that want to invest, or it comes from bank relationships that you have. How did that, without going into numbers, how did that work for you, Justin, from the standpoint of, hey, we need some capital to start this thing? And I wrote this 40, I think you said 7-page business model. How did you go about those steps to get started?
Yeah. So for what it's worth, I want to sketch out like what we're up to right now, because it informs what you just said. So, our company, Cedar and Stone Nordic Sauna, we're actually a stress relief company. I know we started a lot talking about sauna. All I'm trying to do is help everybody relieve stress, live a little more fulfilled, little lighter, be more resilient when the world's like hitting you in the face every day, because that's like a pretty honest picture of work and life, and having kids and being in the world is like, it can be super hard. The sauna really, for me, has always been the great equalizer there. It's always been the thing that after the hardest day, you leave and you feel lighter. You feel more supported. You feel more connected to the people around you that you're in the sauna with. So our goal and our mission, like the next 10 years, Tom, I am committed to inviting and hosting 1 million people for sauna. That's like the thing I'm giving my life to in my working life, is like, we're going to invite 1 million people to do that. We're doing that through a bunch of different ways. And the business plan started with 1 or 2 of those, and now there's even more. So right here in Duluth, I know you have your sauna in your backyard, a few steps off your deck there. For me, we have a couple of them. So we have one that is publicly available. People book sessions. They come and enjoy the sauna. It's for folks who have never done it, it's such a great introduction, because it's like having a tour guide. You've grown up with this thing, Tom. You were telling me before your bloodline and how much percentage Finnish you are. Good Finns like you and I, we talk about things like that because we've grown up with it. Some people don't know what you know. They don't know all the good stuff that you know. For us, it's really been this like, how do we serve that to more people? We serve thousands of people a year in the experience of sauna right down on the harbor. People are jumping in the lake 12 months a year. Oh my gosh, it's fun. And we're opening more spaces like that, which is so fun. The other sides of our business are also building for people. When they have that experience and they test drive it, and they say, ooh, this was amazing. I want that in my backyard. I want that at my cabin. Well, we say, great, we'll help you with that. So we're a custom manufacturing company. We build beautiful, sustainable saunas that go all over North America. Like, it's been wild to be sort of taking these things crafted here in Duluth and sending them all over. I know you've had that experience where you're taking this handmade thing and now it's in far away places, and you're like, wow, how the heck do we do that? So experience, design and build, and then we sell retail products associated with it, and we train entrepreneurs, because here's the other thing. Sauna's having a little moment here, Tom. Cold plunging is getting talked about by every other podcaster. I just did that as a normal thing growing up, that we go cut a hole in the ice and jump in. Now there's science behind it. There's health benefits attached to it. So we're actually training sauna entrepreneurs who are interested in this work, who want to serve their community and want to start a business in a new location. We have a program for that. That's my educational background that we were talking about. So those 4 areas are really for us kind of this flywheel that the company has grown and grown and grown and built and built and built. At the beginning, I had caffeine and dreams. I had a vision. I had where we were going and a business plan. And what we funded first was the experience. We actually funded that piece of getting people into the sauna first before we funded the construction company and all the tools. But those things were really tied hand in hand as we kicked off. And now, a number of years later, and I think we might get to this, but we have like 30 staff people and families who are getting supported by this, and it's really wonderful. It's such an honor. How the heck did we fund it at the beginning?
Let's go back a little bit here,
Yep.
because first, I know we started this at the very beginning, but since we're now going to jump into the kind of almost like two parts of your business. One is constructing these awesome saunas for customers, but the other part is your mission of getting so many people to learn what taking a sauna actually does for you physically. And you stole my thunder here about jumping in lakes, cutting holes in ice, but we'll get to that in a minute. But before, Justin, we get going, I do want to take just a little bit of a pause here. I want you to give everyone all of your social handles and your website so they can go see your awesome website, which I've been on. Also watch your YouTubes to see the beautiful work you do. So if you could give everyone your social handles so they can start following you, and also your website so they can view you.
Yeah, follow along, everyone. If you're on the web, cedarandstonesauna.com, and is written out. We'll link it in the show notes. And in addition to that, follow us along on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, everywhere. Usually it's Cedar and Stone Sauna. And then YouTube especially, we have a lot of, we're producing a lot of content. We're on your podcast here today, but we're producing content kind of all over to really tell the story, to help people come alongside all the fun things we're doing. I mean, it's a fun YouTube video to crane a sauna over a house, or ship one over a lake on a small barge onto somebody's dock, or to build a sauna literally out of ice, which we did 2 years ago. And we have a bunch more fun stuff coming up, like the floating sauna that we built that's sitting in the harbor. So there's some cool things. We'd love for you to check it out, see what we're up to. And that's who we are, cedarandstonesauna.com.
All right, we'll get back to that. But before we even go on, for listeners,
this is it, Tom. Yep.
The pronunciation of sauna, and that is the way you say it. There's no other proper way to say it. Dang it anyway.
All right, listeners, what your experience with Tom here is right now, he's a cultural preservationist. He has this background that he loves a thing, and he knows more about a thing than you maybe do. And so if you like experience something great, you want to preserve it. I grew up pronouncing that word just like Tom did in the Finnish dialect. It's the one Finnish word in the English language. And that would be pronounced, everybody with me now, sauna. And you can, when you get in parts of the world where there are a lot of people from Finnish origin, they are going to let you know, hey, that word, that's a Finnish word. Here's how we pronounce that in Finnish. Now, Tom, if we're trying to do the thing you're talking about, which is to get people to change their behavior and actually change how they pronounce that, very seldom have I watched people change their behavior with reprimand or force. And my favorite example of this is like food, right? And so I don't think I called it a quesadilla until I tasted one, right? So it was probably a quesadilla when I first saw it. And then you have one and it's tasty and you're like, what's in this? How do I do that? So those thousands of people a year we're hosting for sauna, by the end of it, Tom, they're coming up to us and they're like, this was amazing. I've never experienced this. All I knew was that little hot room at the gym, or that one next to the pool at the hotel, which somebody went in once, and there's a big giant sign that says don't throw water on the rocks. Now that is the sort of Americanized version. It's the McDonald'sified version. It's not the good quality thing that you're talking about. But by the time we give them the real thing, they're saying, wait a minute, you say that differently than we do. Why? Tell me more. Tell me how. And so if we educate and give them experience first, yeah, I think we got a shot at helping sauna be pronounced sauna here in the US.
Hey folks, I think I just got my hand slapped in a very, very nice way. Justin, thank you for straightening me out there. I'll be nicer to people as we go.
Just be a little nicer with the amazing cultural gift that you enjoy, and more people will want to do it.
So you talk about taking a sauna and jumping in a lake. And after this, I promise you, we're going to get to all about your building of saunas and the arbor wood, the burnt wood, and modular and all that. But talk about, everyone hears about these cold plunges and challenges and all this now and what it does for endorphins in our brain and everything. Now you're talking about, wait a minute, people are going to take a sauna and they're going to get all hot and sweaty and stuff. Then they're going to bail in a lake summer, fall, winter, and spring.
Yep. Yeah. Sauna is a verb. It's not just this hot room. It's a process. It's a practice. So when I say that word sauna, I think of much more than the warm piece of workout equipment that the gym owner wants to make it, right? Sorry, Joe Rogan. Sorry, folks that are talking only about protocols. They boiled sauna down to, how can I test myself? Sauna is about enjoying, not enduring. Sauna is about this process. Here's the steps: hot, cold, rest, rehydrate, and repeat. And you can do each of those steps for different lengths and intensities. Hot, if you're new to sauna, go in at sort of these introductory temperatures, 160 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. That's really nice. It's an easy sort of starting heat. Once you've done it a while, 180 to 200 is really nice. If you're a pro and you've done it a long time, you want to really be in 200 plus, great. And cold can be going outside and cooling down, having the breeze on you. It can be a cold shower. It can be jumping in a cold plunge. Or up here in Minnesota, it could be cutting a literal hole in 3 feet of ice and then going and jumping in the water. And never do you feel more alive than when you pop out of that water. And so the process of sauna is really important to me. And that's the thing we're sort of helping people try to understand is, I hear a lot, oh yeah, saunas, I'm more of a hot tub person. You ever heard that?
Oh, Lord, yes.
Those people usually have only experienced either the lower quality versions of sauna or the first 10 minutes of sauna, which is to say they've gone in, they said, I don't know what to do now. It's a little hot, I'm a little sweaty. Now what? And they leave and they think they're sort of done with it. The first 10 minutes are the hardest part because your body is adjusting to the heat. When you go cool off and you come back in again, then, oh my gosh, your body can handle so much more, right? And so that idea of giving people a better education, a better understanding of just truly what sauna is, being that process of thermic bathing. It's one of the many. When we look around cultures all over the world, there are many thermic bathing traditions: Finnish sauna, Russian banya, Native American sweat lodge, Turkish hammam, Korean jjinjingbam. I could keep going. I'm not going to. There are many. Humans have been figuring out that hot and cold are good for our health forever. And sauna is this really captivating one from Northern Europe that came across here 100+ years ago with our immigrant grandfather and grandmothers. And now we get to enjoy it. So that's a little bit on what sauna is. That's a little bit on the process of it. It always includes hot and cold. What do you do, Tom? You got one right at your house there. Do you ever go roll in the snowbank? That's a fun addition to it.
Lord, yeah. I mean, years ago, we used to jump in, cut the hole in the 3 feet of ice and jump in there. But I'm too old now. I'll get stuck in the lake and they'll get me out in the spring. So not so much that anymore, but been there, done that many times. But getting outside, and it's funny, even though I thought I was a seasoned pro doing this for so many years, I love your analogy of heat, cool, rinse, repeat, because that's exactly what we do. And for me, it's 3 times.
Yep.
I will go in the sauna, get a good heat and good sweat going, go out, cool down, drink something, get back in there. Now the sweat's really pouring immediately. It just starts running off you. Out again and back in one last time. That's usually for me a shorter version, that last one. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of always been a joke to me because when I'll sit there, I'll put my arms on my knees and my head down, and the sweat starts, it's not dripping off my nose. It's a stream at that point, just coming off the tip of my nose. And then all of a sudden it stops. And I know I'm done.
Yeah.
And it's the craziest thing. Then I go and I wash up, cool shower, all that kind of stuff. I've already done the rolling in the snow earlier and all that. and then you cool back down, and then usually mine are at night. And I'm telling you, once you've cooled down, you have to cool down before you go in bed. But once you've cooled down and you get in bed, you want to talk about a restful sleep.
Yep.
Holy moly, you have a restful sleep. So that's
Yep.
mine for doing it.
Yep, you're in it and you know it, and people sort of give up after those first few steps or think it's only that. And that process of those 3 rounds, oh my gosh, it's so good. And the funny thing is, we gotta so much of this is growing because of wellness data and medical data and science, which actually is awesome because my grandma and grandpa have always said it's good for you, right? The sound is the cure-all. There's old Finnish proverbs for this. And what's true now is we also have the Mayo Clinic publishing studies of why this is healthy and what it's doing in your body. So what you're doing there, Tom, is you're bringing up your heart rate. It's the lowest form of cardio workout you can do. You can go sit in the sauna and relax on those benches, and you're getting a cardio workout. It's mimicking exercise without having to move your muscles, especially for folks where it's harder to move those muscles and those joints in later years. Oh man, it keeps you going, right? You can keep up. My grandpa, he's 82 now, and the sauna in their house, it's 53 years old, and it still runs. I was in it last week with my son, and they use it all the time. I mean, they use it multiple times a week because it's another way to keep them going. And the medical data, actually, most of it has been researched on proper sauna and protocols. The ones that everybody cite, it's doing multiple rounds, proper heats, appropriate. It's not infrared. It's not 20 minutes. It's the appropriate amount of time. So I want to be highlighting a couple of these things that's like in the fine print when some of the companies say, look at all the data, look at all this. I'm going to sell you an infrared cabin. I say, wait a minute, that might not even be a sauna. We've removed some of the key ingredients from that. Now, I'm getting in fighting words here. If you have an infrared, it's okay. It's a nice gateway to the real thing. But Tom, you're right on it with your rounds and your process.
So now let's get into your business. So our listeners can learn more about your business, Cedar and Stone Nordic Saunas, and how they can actually buy one from you and how they can design one and the differences of them. One of the things I saw was that you can make them modular.
Yeah. So, we love building things. We love creating things. We love making things that are beautiful with the best materials. So, when I was growing up, there was this phrase when I was building saunas with my dad and grandpa. There's this phrase that has been burned into my mind ever since. And we were good, stoic Midwesterners. We were Finns. It was good enough for who it's for. It was this self-deprecating thing of let's build the thing as cheaply and easily as we can. And I get it. I understand the component of that, of like, we aren't too fancy. And I'm a guy who's always been a creative, who's always loved design, who's always loved quality things. And it irked me when I heard that from Dad and Grandpa that it couldn't be better for us. I actually thought we deserved something even better. Now, those saunas are great. They're still there. They've been there for decades. But when I started the company, as I was doing that work, I was saying, you know what? Everybody in the sauna industry for the last 3 decades has gone to the cheapest common denominator. Guess what, Tom? You can go to Costco today and buy a sauna, and it's going to be in the shape of a barrel. And I could tell you why that's concessions on quality. Barrels exist because they're cheap and easy to make, not because they're the best quality or the longest lasting or the most beautiful or sustainable. And so I said, let's go the other direction. Let's build the best thing, the thing that'll last a long time, thing that'll be beautiful, thing that'll be designed for you. And that's what we do. We build, I would say, some of North America's best saunas. And we build them here in Duluth. This is the crazy part. And we ship them fully built most of the time and install them on people's properties. So one of the big headaches in the construction industry is that, like, is it actually going to be on time? Is it going to be on budget? Is there going to be like a construction project in my backyard for the next chunk of months? We are trying to solve those things with a much more modular built. The architects and I would talk about volumetric modular construction. So we're building things in a controlled environment, prepping them for delivery, doing some site prep on so that things work and last a long time ahead of time with your electrician and a landscaper. And then we come in and about a day later, you have the most beautiful sauna you've seen, looking at the lake, looking at the backyard, looking at the forest, up on the top of your patio if it's in an urban setting. We've done a whole bunch of different ones. And that has been the most hard and most fun kind of work, working with people that care a lot about those things, and also the building a manufacturing company during the pandemic. You probably remember supply chains during those months. Hard stuff, hard problems to be solving amidst everything. And here we are doing it now, and it's tons of fun.
CLT panels. Can you explain what those are?
I sure can. So Tom is talking about this form of construction that we do. So most homes in the US, if they've been built since the sort of like 40s, are stick frame construction. That's the most common way that we sort of know how to build a thing, is 2x4s and insulation and cladding on the inside and outside. If you go to Europe right now, they're also looking at how do we build things with more sustainable materials. We build with wood, but also we can build bigger things with wood. CLT panels it stands for cross-laminated timber. The architects would put it under a mass timber. And that's using wood for bigger things. In Milwaukee right now, Tom, they're building a 15-foot high rise, and it's not concrete and steel beams, it's wood. It's wood that is the structural members for that. And it's CLT panels, it's glulam beams, it's all these things. We're actually building small spaces, saunas, which we've talked about, and small cabins right now out of cross-laminated timber and mass timber, because we think it's a better choice for the environment. We also think it's a better choice for longevity and beauty. So these CLT panels, it's almost like the old school working with logs. And there's a geeky building science. Can I get really geeky about saunas for a second? Is that okay?
Oh, please do.
The old log saunas are sort of the most revered. They're this like, the heat in them is exquisite. I am a geek about heat, like people are about wine and beer and spirits and all those things. I love heat and the quality of it. If you are in a room that is all timber and all wood, especially big log wood, it's an even heat. It's not harsh. It's not like one side of me is scorched and the other side of me is cool, or my toes are cold and my head is hot. You actually step up in. That's why benches in saunas are high, is because you actually want to step up into the heat. Your toes are right around the rocks. And that's why another reason why the barrel sauna, your toes are below. They're and you're hunched over, right? And so these little nuances, they actually do change the experience. For us, CLT panels, they act as the log. They're 4 to 5 inches thick of wood, and we do put a cladding around them to make them weatherproof and beautiful with some additional products that we'll talk about a little bit. But the whole room, the envelope of the room actually warms up from top to bottom. So you come in and you can't pinpoint necessarily, if you close your eyes, where the heater is. You just know, wow, this space has just enveloped me in heat. Now I'm going to get into my rounds. So those are some things about how we build. Does that make sense? Are there some questions of follow-up on that, like real geeky CLT panels that we're using to build that we're shipping across the country?
Here's what I took from you is you're telling us that the old school log saunas, that once they heated up, it was heat coming from all the way around you. It wasn't just coming from the sauna stove, whether it was wood or whether it was electric, and the rocks, obviously, and pouring some water on to get some steam and on the walls to get that. But then you're saying what we're doing is, since ours is we're not making log buildings, we're making CLT panels, which are going to mimic a log building, so that when you get in this sauna that's built by you, Justin, that the heat is going to envelop you from all the way around you. That's what I heard.
Yep, that's right. And it's, it's a lot like using really good materials. I mean, you guys use canvas and leather, right? And it's like there are cheaper, easier materials to make things out of. Of course there are. It's a lot harder to get a 10 by 40 foot, literally, CLT panel delivered here. We get them by the truckload. And then we cut those into wall assemblies. It's a lot easier to carry a stick and put up that. but that's a little like saunaing in a foil packet. Those stick frame walls, and then your foil vapor barrier, and then your interior paneling. And so we're really committed to what could be the best way, what could be the highest quality, and who are the handful of people around the world who do want that. And it doesn't have to be everybody. Sauna can be for anyone at all different shapes and sizes and ways they're constructed and things like that. But we do know that people do want the best sometimes, and we want to serve those folks.
I was watching some videos, Justin, that you put out, and tell us about arbor wood or burnt wood, if you will.
Oh yeah, Arbor Wood. There's a local company also based out of Duluth here. We're just like, this is a sauna podcast. This is also geeky wood science podcast here today for you construction nerds in the business realm with us. Arbor Wood Co. is a Duluth-based company that cares and processes thermally modified wood. So it's taking a wood product that goes through this chemical change without the chemicals. They heat the wood in these kilns with heat and steam, kind of like a sauna, but at higher temps. And it changes the chemical composition of the wood. It actually changes, it like bakes out all the things that make that wood yummy to bacteria and rot and decay. So it makes them longer lasting, more dimensionally stable, more beautiful in some really interesting ways. And we like working with local suppliers when we can. And so they're dear friends of ours, and they make an amazing product. And it sort of fits both the commitments we have around that and the commitments we have around design and beauty. One of the finishes on that, Tom, is a burnt wood siding. So they take that thermally modified pine, which is usually a really blonde wood, then it gets modified. It looks chocolatey, almost like a walnut color. And then they send it through this process of charring the top layer, brushing it, oiling it. And it's this, I have some of it here. Our listeners can't see it, but it is this just beautiful sheen it's fun in the sauna application. It's also just super in vogue right now. People are loving this idea of blacks. They're loving the idea of burnt wood. And it's actually inspired by a Japanese technique called yakasugi or shasugi ban, which they would actually char cedar wood, and then that would be the thing that protects the wood from the elements. The actual carbon char is the protector. You don't need to seal it more than that. So it's super fun. We love it. It's a really interesting way. And a lot of our clients are like, man, that's on my Pinterest board. I absolutely want to have that thing at our house. It looks great. And it's a good story because it's, again, local companies supporting one another.
So Justin, this is all super cool, right? You're a sauna builder, right? And I have to apologize. Mine's the old stick built with the foil. But I will tell you, I actually went to Palo, Minnesota to get my cedar, my tongue and groove sealer.
There you go.
Finnish community, to a lumber yard that is family owned. So I was supporting small business to get all my cedar.
I love it. Like I said, there's room for all of it. There's room for, when you built it, we probably weren't building fancy CLT saunas. Okay. So
I don't know if you were born when I built mine, Justin. So you may have been 3 years old building your first one. Can you do something now for us all? Because it's all fun and games to talk about the fun part of our business. I mean, I can talk about mine and how cool it is to deal with bison leather and all these great materials and stuff, and your saunas and how beautiful they are, and inside out, as well as the experience in them. But now let's talk about day to day. You're running a business. So it's not all fun and games, it's business as well. You have employees, you're responsible and accountable to them and their families. What's your current day-to-day responsibilities look like as the founder, the CEO, and the man in charge of your business?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about business and entrepreneurship, I am quick to cast the vision for people. And I am also quick to be really honest about, this is not the easiest way to make a buck. It's not the easiest way to live a life. You know, when you commit to starting a business, my wife calls it it felt like having twins. We had two real live kids, biological kids, and then we started a business right after, and it felt like we also had twins right after the two. And that in so many ways is just such a real endeavor for us, that this business has grown. We've gotten out of toddler phase. We're starting to scale. We've hired more people. My day-to-day has changed a lot. It's sort of, I'm signing up to have the hardest conversations and solve the problems and turn every crank I can and find the right people who can do that better so I can get out of the way. And I think that's the phase that we're in right now. Is so much of my work has been as that visionary, as that starter. Let's get a thing off the ground. Let's figure it out initially. And now let's find really talented people to build systems and help that thing operate even more smoothly than I ever could have. And my day-to-day really is spent in that sort of leadership area. And then making sure in a few key areas we're holding to the values, we're holding to our mission. I will say we're not big enough and structured enough where I'm totally out of the day-to-day operations in a couple areas. I still work a lot with clients and sales. I love getting to be in sort of design conversations and design work with some of them, especially on big projects. So if people reach out, there's a chance they might talk to me along the way, which I love, and at the same time, I'm aware that some of those things for me, I need to be handing off. I never want to be the bottleneck in our business, and that's both time and that's sort of leadership capacity and capability. So for us, I'm trying to make sure, what can I do to help our team be really supported that day? And sometimes it's like, we're solving big, hard challenges, and oh man, it's heavy. When you have 30 employees and a big payroll, and you're committing to their health and welfare and health insurance and making sure people's families get food on the table, that's like, it's a very real weight to me that, back to our sort of initial conversation, it's the assignment I've been given. I know I'm signed up to do this. So yeah, hard days, bring them on. I know I'm supposed to be here. And good days, that's all right. We're doing okay. We're going to keep going. We're going to probably run into a few hard days coming up here. So I hope I'm painting my weeks okay there. We're in a transition phase of having some really talented leaders around me. So my work is now, how do I support them the best? And that feels fun, coming back to my educational background. It's even more rewarding when you watch somebody grow on your team and be better at the thing than you ever could have been. And you get to say, wow, I couldn't have done it that good. So I'm going to get out of the way, and I'm going to try to do that for the next person. That's honestly more rewarding to me than just being the guy, you said it earlier, being the sauna king. I'm not in front of the Instagram because I have to all the time. I mean, I'm like, that's an area I'm going to serve the business, and I'm going to cast the vision, and yeah, I'm good at it. I can do that. But it's not because of my ego that I'm in front. It's because we're going to grow. We're going to give this to 1 million people over the next 10 years. Somebody's got to be telling them about it and inviting them to it.
What an awesome vision and story. That is great. Who inspires you? You're inspiring the heck out of me right now. In fact, in my next life, I want to be a sauna salesman. That's what I want to do.
Hey, Tom, we might be hiring on the sales team. You can come on over. We can get you on board. For me, oh man, who inspires me is a great question. I've grown up around some really, I mentioned my grandpas earlier. I've had some really important leaders in my life. My grandpa on the trucking company side built a big business. Started with one truck. When he died, there was 300 trucks. Now that business is owned by my uncle and my cousin. Now they're at 750 trucks. They've made a big business out of a thing. But what I learned from Grandpa Bill in watching his commitment was also, I watched him really give his life. He had a heart attack at 55. He survived it. He changed a lot of how he lived his life, and he eked out another 4 years, and then he died. So he worked himself to death. He was so committed to his company. On the other side, I watched my grandpa, who I talked about earlier, who's he's a barber. He built a really small company, but he also was super present to his kids and his grandkids. And now his great grandkids. Now he's got a bunch of great grandkids, and he's still around. And I hope I can straddle that. I hope I can be inspired by those two figures and say, hey, I want the commitment to, if the thing's going to grow, let's grow it. But I don't want to give my life for it. My company isn't my life, right? And I don't want to lose my family over it. I want my kids to know me, right? I don't want them to get, at the end of the time when they're in our house, whenever that is, I don't want them to look back and say, yeah, Dad was around occasionally when we were young. But when you start building a big business, that's the temptation, right? And so for me, yeah, the inspiration definitely started with those guys, and now I'm learning every day, because I got to keep growing, I got to keep changing. We have different needs every single day.
Oh, good for you, Justin. So we're going to now take a whole pause and go a different direction.
Okay.
We call this, Justin, our packed questions segment.
Let's do it.
This is just to get away from the business end and just find a little bit more about you as an entrepreneur. What's your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? I really liked, this is a new one. I really liked Oppenheimer this summer. It came out right with the Barbie movie. I've always loved Christopher Nolan and his work. He's kind of a deep thinker. Remember, I was a philosophy major in college. And that movie is just wow. It is so crazy looking at the atomic bomb and everything they had to do around World War II. And I hope Cillian Murphy wins the Oscar for that. I think he should. So that's a heck of a one. It's my favorite movie this year. That's as close as I'll give you right now.
All right. Favorite place you've ever traveled? Come on, it's got to be Finland, right?
It's absolutely Finland. It's absolutely Finland. I've done a bunch of travel, and before we moved back to Duluth, my wife and I, we went to Finland. And this time, we didn't even talk about this. This was one of the days where sauna became a business idea for me. We toured through Finland, all these public saunas, and one of them was floating out on the Baltic. And I got into this little rowboat with this Finnish man, and he rows me and my wife out, leaves us on a raft, sauna, swim, and it was just magic. And I told my wife that day, we could do this. We could do this in Duluth. And she rolled her eyes and she said, sure, honey. And here we are 13 years later, and we're literally doing it. Floating sauna in the harbor, sauna as a business. Yeah, Finland, it's a heck of a place.
Biggest fear?
The business being successful enough that I blow up my family and I lose myself in the process. That's the big fear. And that's what I'm trying to fight against. So be present for my wife and my family and my kids, and keep healthy along the way.
You know what? I don't have any question that you will do that after discussing all of this with you today, that you're pretty aligned in what your values are. It may be a fear of yours, but certainly doesn't seem like it's going to ever be a fear that comes true.
I appreciate that.
Favorite band or artist?
Ooh, I'm gonna pull one that's another one from across the pond. There's this Icelandic band called Sigur. They're amazing. I've seen them in concert a number of times. Sigur, go look them up if you're interested. It's ethereal. It's the kind of music when you need to get work done, you can play that in the background and you're just in the zone and you're focused. Yeah.
And the best piece of life advice, Justin, that you have ever received?
It's sort of a funny one. I hope the story is not too long. Right before we had our first daughter, I spent time with a guy. He was a pastor out in Ireland, and I met him like weeks before our daughter was born. And he said, oh, hey, just so you know, everybody's going to be giving you advice of how to be a parent. He said, my advice is don't worry about it. Don't listen to him. Don't take all the advice that all the other people say. This is how to be a parent. And then he said, and by the way, here's my one piece of advice. He said, there's going to be a moment after you've had the baby, your wife's still in the hospital, where you got to go get something. You need to go run and pick up something. When you're out, find the best bottle of whiskey you can find, because there's no better time than the birth of a child to celebrate. And so I did with both of our kids. on that trip, when I had to go get something, I went and found the best bottle of whiskey I could. And so I have a really nice bottle of Lagavulin 16. That's a standard that is my bottle for my daughter. And then I got an Ardbeg for my son that I have a little sip on their birthdays. And I think that's a heck of a piece of advice.
I think that's a good one to go with and a good one to end on. Folks, our special guest today is Justin Juntunen.
You got it.
Founder and CEO at Cedar and Stone Nordic Sauna. Justin, give us your handles for social and your website. People, go follow and go watch the videos. Please give those to us.
Yeah, what an honor to be here today, Tom. Super fun to be with you. If you guys are interested and want to learn about what we're up to, follow us on all the things Cedar and Stone Nordic Sauna. Cedar like the wood, Cedar, and A-N-D, Stone, S-T-O-N-E, Sauna, S-A-U-N-A. And that's cedarandstonesauna.com on all the platforms, on all the things. And Tom, really appreciate it. This was so much fun. I think we're going to need to light the sauna and warm up the sauna and sometime go take a sauna together.
I'll tell you what, I'll bring the cedar boughs.
Sounds great.
Excellent.
Appreciate
Justin,
it, Tom.
Thank you so much for being here. And folks, until next time, unplug from the indoors and recharge in a sauna.